Okay, so we talked about asynchronous workflow yesterday. We talked about what Ajax does, why we need Ajax, and what things that Ajax brings to us. We also talked about callback function. So whenever, since JavaScript is a single-threaded programming language, you can only execute one instruction at one point of time. If one instruction is taking longer than expected, it will skip that instruction and then go jump on to next instruction. But yeah, Vivek.
Bro, can you once go over callback function? I did not remember what exactly it is.
Okay, sure. So let's begin going in here. JavaScript, HTML, console. Okay. Vivek, I'm just writing a bunch of console log statements in here. This is first, and this is second, this is third, and this is third. So since JavaScript is a single-threaded programming language, the execution of these statements are always one after another. It will print the first statement, then go print the second statement, then print the third statement. Now this is a synchronous flow, okay, because everything is happening in sync. But what if you have an asynchronous flow? Now what is an asynchronous flow? For example, you're making a call to an API. There are a lot of factors that get into consideration. How long the API, you get the data back from API, like like a simple products JSON. As soon as I hit the enter button on my browser, I'm getting a bunch of JSON in here. I don't know how long would it take for me to get back the JSON. In ideal, in an ideal case scenario, it has to be very quick in milliseconds. Like it took 46 milliseconds to get back the data. But in most of the scenarios, it's not predictable. I mean, like, it's never predictable. It can go, you can go make a request to a server, and it can take how much of time it needs to take, and then it can drop your request, or anything can go wrong. It depends on your bandwidth, connectivity, a lot of factors. So what you do is, when you make an API call which is asynchronous, because the second statement in here, let's assume that's an asynchronous call, we never know when does it execute, when does it execute if it's an asynchronous call. So what does it do is, it'll try to print the first statement, it'll go in here, print the execute this. But this is, if this is an asynchronous statement, which in my case, would I do something like this. Set timeout is one of the asynchronous method. Okay, and what I do is, inside my asynchronous, let's declare a function here where okay, Karthik says he's still in office, so we'll see if he can join on time. Okay, so I'll do something like this. After this, I create a function. I would say callback function. Now I can name this function anything I like. I can do call me back, anything that is just the name of the function. And what I do is, inside my callback, this function, I actually print my second statement, which is console.second. Okay, now this first statement, it gets printed. The second statement is an asynchronous function. Now let me put that set timeout, and then I pass the name of the function, call me back. And when should I call him back? I should call him back like certain amount of time. I'm giving 2000 milliseconds in here, but in ideal case scenario, this number will be decided by the API call. Okay, and then I click run, and the way it has started executing is that it will go to this first line, it will print it out. This function, I can go back, to make it easier, what I can do is, in terms of line, I can write it in inline. Okay, Vivek. I doing something wrong here? Oh, okay. So Vivek, this set timeout is an asynchronous method. So the JavaScript compiler would start looking at your first line of code. It executes. It starts looking at the second line of code, and then it thinks, it understands that this is an API call. Right now, it's not an API call. It's one of the asynchronous method I'm using in here, which is not an actual API call. Now, once the compiler reaches to this statement, it will understand this is an asynchronous statement, so it will skip it. But it will skip it and then go to the second statement, which is third statement in our case, and then print third. But whenever the compiler is done printing all the statements, then it assigns a callback function to the asynchronous method, where, hey, listen, whenever you're done, print this guy. Whenever you're done, call this function. Now, whenever you're done, call this function. That function becomes the callback function. Okay, we took an example of a haircut salon yesterday. You don't know how long is the wait time, so you tell the hair, the guy who cuts the hair, who does the haircut. You give your number, say, whenever you're done, whenever you're free, whenever whenever it's my turn, just give me a call back. You call me back and I'll be back again to you. I'll have my focus right back again to you. Even this compiler, the callback is this asynchronous call, this asynchronous, the method is also telling it, whenever you're done, this is the function that have to be executed. So if I give it a run, you should see the first, third, and printing immediately. Okay, so printing immediately, and then it goes to the third execution loop, which is called which is a callback function in our case. Now, we use this callback function to get the data from an API or any kind of asynchronous operations. Is that clear, Vivek? I see your message saying got it. Awesome. Now we'll yes.
One simple question again. What if there are two same times? So, for example, we added a function here, set timeout for second. What if there is another set timeout for third?
Okay.
Yeah, that is
okay.
that's what
Cool.
I meant.
Yeah. So what happens is that this is the first execution. This is the first line of execution, right? But both are asynchronous functions. So it will go execute second, okay, and then go print the second to the second time. If you go to a haircut guy, if the first guy comes, gives the number, the second guy also comes, gives the number, whom will he call? If the first guy or the second guy?
First guy.
The first guy. He will always guy the first guy. So this is asynchronous. But again, if you have two asynchronous calls happening at the same time, the one that is triggered first will be executed. Okay. Is that did that answer your question, Vivek?
Yeah, bro. Absolutely. Thanks.
Awesome. Now let's go to our application where we were trying to build an e-commerce website called Supercart, and then we went over component lifecycle and all that stuff, right? Now I'll clear off a bunch of component lifecycles in here, and let's only focus on the render function. For time being, what I do is I create a simple piece of data. I call it var products, okay, and is equal to, I create array of objects. So this is my array, and then inside this array I have my objects. Okay, each object belongs to one simple product. So I say in my object, I say id is equal to 0 or just 1, the name of the product, let's say Apple, and then price of the product, I'm putting it in INR, maybe like I would say name apple 1 kg. Okay, and then I go 200. Okay, then I would say category. So that falls into fruits, right? Or fruit, the category is fruit. Then I go copy this, I add this back in here, and then I say carrot. Okay, and I change this and also change the number, the ID that belongs to this product. So you can always look by the ID. So each object have a unique ID. It doesn't matter, you know, this can be anything. I can say product ID, make it much clearer, product ID and the product name. But I just wanted to make it simple so we can save some keystrokes in here and then name. Okay, now what I do is I want to print, no, I like Hana to help me here. So I rewrite my component name. So I call this product, and then I do the same thing back in here. Hana, can you help me console log the first product name inside my div? This guy, I need to print that on my browser. Are you with me? Hana, can you hear me? Vivek? Yeah. So how do you
console log or in curly, what is called flower brackets, product.id.name.
product.id.name? Is that all?
Console log. You want to console log?
Oh, I mean, I want to show it on the browser.
Like we can use some tags P or
console log.
Okay,
Print it,
cool.
bro, console log.
Yeah. No, I want to show it on my browser because everything that goes inside a render function will show up on my browser, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm using a h1 tag in here. So I want to access the product name, the first product name. How do I do that? Yeah, and you say products.id.name.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to change your mind, or is that good?
Give me a second.
Imagine, no, this is an array. How do you locate the items inside an array?
Um,
products of 0.
products of yeah.
Products of 0. Let us give Vivek an opportunity to do this. Products of 0.
Products of 0
Dot
name.
awesome, bro. And I give it a refresh, and you should able to see that. What if I want to console log the? Now Hana, help me to do this. Hana, how do you console log the price? Hana, if you're talking, you're on mute. Okay, Abdul.
I think it's products of 0 dot price.
Exactly. Product of 0 dot and price. You should have the price. And let's not print the ID and the category. Let's save them for later point of time. Now, guys, what if I want to do the same thing for the second product? What should I do? So what I do is I make this as a little section here. So this is my first section. Okay. And then I have a second section in here. And what I do is I copy this and I just do this and I say 1 and 1. Is that right? That is what I'm supposed to do. Yes, folks. Right? Arjun, Vivek, Hana, Abdul. That is what I'm supposed to do, right? Guys, come on. What if I suppose I have another item in here? What am I supposed to do?
add one more section probably.
grapes, right? So I have to add another section here, okay, and do 2. What if I have hundreds of items? Should I keep doing this over again and again and again?
Yeah, let's use for loop.
Exactly, let's use for loop. If you guys remember from the early classes of JavaScript, we did use a for loop to print numbers 1 to 100. We were able to print the products out of a JSON object, right? So what I do is before the render function and after the render function, before I return, what I do is I do it a enter, okay? And then what I do is for a declaration of a variable, let index is equal to 0, which is my initial index. And then if my index should be what? Should be greater than or less than how many number of times I have to loop through the object? Anna?
3.
Vivek, how many times I should loop through the object?
3.
3 times. But how do I know I have to loop 3 times? An array has a method to it called length. Length will tell me how many items are inside the array if you have missed the first JavaScript class. So what I do is index less than my products dot length, okay, then I increase the index again, index plus plus. And then what I do is I'll just console log and see if I'm able to print all the products inside my array. So I go products, and then what is the value that I'm supposed to do in here? Not 0, not 1, not 2, but this is a dynamic value. So I use an index, which is increasing every time the loop iterates. Okay, so I give it a refresh, open up my console. There is a filter applied to my console. Let me clear off the filter and you should be able to see that. Okay, so I got 3 products consoled onto my browser window, but I want them to have it on my UI. So I go ahead and do something like this. So I want to go the first products and then I want to access the name only. So I do this and give it a refresh and you should only able to see the name, and the same thing. Okay. And the same thing, thank you Manoj for joining in. And the same thing I would do for the price. Okay, and I should able to see the product and the price. Now what I do is I generate these sections inside the for loop. Okay, I generate these sections inside the for loop. So what I do is, if you guys are familiar with JavaScript arrays, so this is what it happens. Where cars is equal to Kia, Nissan. Okay, and if I want to add an item into the array, so let's see console.log. I say car and I should able to see 2 items inside an array, but I should able to add another item into the array. So what I do is car dot push. I use a word called push dot push. It's an array method like a length. Length gives me the length of the array. A push actually pushes an item at the end of the array. So I add Honda here and then console log it again. Now I should have the first statement should only get me Kia and Nissan, and the second statement should get me the Honda. So what I'm doing here, I'm trying to add an item into an array. Okay, so I use the same mechanism here, and what I do is instead of just console logging, I create another variable called var product sections. Okay, and this is an empty array initially. Okay, are you guys with me? And then I use the product sections inside the for loop. Product sections, this is an empty array, so I want to push something. So dot push What am I supposed to push? I'm supposed to push a section. Okay, then I push this section here. Instead of 0, I say index. I say index. Okay, then I, instead of hard coding the sections in here, I would just use a curly brace and then use my product sections here. And you should able to see my product sections here. And no matter how many products I have, so let's say I go ahead and add another, another products in here, you should able to see them. Are you guys following, or do you want me to go over this again? It's easy to be confused in here. Record. Okay, so I have a list of items which are inside my products array, and on the render I'm taking each product, okay, and I'm generating each section before I return onto the browser, and then use my variable that holds the views, the product sections. Now this is not a one section that belong to a particular product. It has all the 3 products in it. And instead of going hard coding the values 0, 1, 2, or 3, 4, because I never know how many indexes, how many objects I have in an array. So this is dynamic. I can have one object. My UI would still work because the length of my products is 1, just 1. It would still work. But the same case would work if I hard code the values 0, 1, 2, 3, because 2 does not exist, 3 does not exist. So I'm making my code more dynamic, okay, using variables. Instead of hard coding the template, I'm generating the sections using React JavaScript. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Now, instead of having the products inside external variable in here, let's bring that variable into the React. And I'll let you know why do we need to bring that into the React. Okay, so I use a constructor, which is the first component lifecycle. And anytime if I have to create a state, I need a constructor. Okay, that is de facto. I need a state, I have to create a constructor. Now, let me show you guys. And then I have to call super here. I have to call super in here because I am calling the methods on the React component. Those methods, if I have to call those methods, I have to call a super in here. That's more detailed, advanced topic in JavaScript. Then I go super, then I create a state. So how do I create a state from yesterday's class? This dot state and is equal to my object. Now, what is this in this context? Arjun, what is this in this context?
Oh, sorry. Can you repeat?
Yeah. On line number 16, I'm using a word called this. Now, what is this inside this context?
This state.
Yeah. So when I say this, what does it mean in React component? It means the React component itself. So the product itself is this.
Product, yeah.
Okay. Whenever I call anywhere throughout the component, whenever I call say this belong, whenever say this is the product name. Okay. This is the, I'm sorry, the component name. So class component, this becomes the component. Okay. And I'm creating a state on that component. Okay. So what I do is I go back to products and copy this guy and I put that in a state. If I have to do as an object, I don't need an equal to because I'm not assigning that to a variable, but instead this is a key value pair. This is a key and this is the value. Okay. Let me get the products back again in here so I can copy everything. So copy this guy, my array, including the products, create a method, create the first component lifecycle constructor, and then called super, and then called this dot state, which is the state of the component, and then add my products into the state. Okay, now if you remember from yesterday's class, how do I access a variable that is inside the state? Now the products is not, I remove this guy, products. Okay, now the products is inside the state. It says product is not defined because the product is right inside the state. So how do I define this? How do I access a variable that is inside my state? Simple. Which component is this? This is the component. Dot state. Where is the products? Inside the state. So this dot state. Same thing. This dot state. This dot state. This dot state. And UI should be back again. Any questions on here?